Hi, I'm Rich Torrey. Welcome to another Level Up Cartooning. All you ever need to follow along with me is a pencil and paper. It doesn't get any easier than that, right? Now, before we get started, make sure you hit the thumbs up and the subscribe button as it helps this channel to grow, and hit the bell so you never miss a lesson. So last week, we drew Maggie Simpson, Dot from Animaniacs, and Minnie Mouse in a continuation of our simple circle exercise to get us in the habit of breaking down characters we're about to draw into simple, easy-to-draw shapes, which in turn makes it easier to recreate that character again and again. That starts with training our brains to think that way the moment we first look at the character we're about to draw. This week, we're going to expand on that exercise a little bit, starting with simple shapes, but in this case, we're going to draw ovals, not one, but two, connecting or overlapping to construct our characters' heads. The heads of all three characters we're about to draw today will be constructed in a similar fashion, with two ovals, one for the cranium and a smaller oval for the mouth or cheek area. And yet we're going to be drawing three very different characters. Okay, so let's draw. Today we'll be starting with one of Looney Tunes' luminaries, Tweety Bird. Tweety's head is constructed with an oval that is taller than it is wide for his cranium, and then a smaller, wider than tall oval for his cheeks. Take note of that cheek oval so you don't make it too wide. It does not stick out as wide as the widest part of his cranium. Also, Tweety's entire body is about 1.5 heads tall. In other words, however tall you draw Tweety's head, his entire body is 1.5 of those tall. One last thing, Tweety's feet are huge. In fact, they're as big as his body. Finally, as I mentioned in our last two videos, in each of the three drawings we'll be doing today, we'll be using the Level Up Cartooning process. In step 1, we lightly draw a roadmap of the character. Step 2, we rough out the features of that character, still drawing lightly. And finally, in step 3, we draw in the details. Okay, so let's draw Tweety Bird from Looney Tunes. So there's our drawing of Tweety. Okay, I just want to pause here just to remind you that the purpose of this exercise is to get you to start immediately breaking down a character you're about to draw into those simple shapes. Have that in mind as we draw our second character, the Brain, from Pinky and the Brain. Pinky and the Brain is a part of the Animaniacs universe. If you're not familiar with the Brain, well, he basically spends every waking hour scheming on ways to take over the world. I think he and Plankton should team up for their own show. Anyways, like Tweety, the Brain's head is made up of two ovals, one for the cranium, one for his mouth and cheek area. But unlike Tweety, the Brain's first oval is wider than it is tall. The Brain's body is another oval, thinner and taller than his head oval, and his entire body is just under two of those heads tall. In other words, however tall his giant noggin is, his entire body is just under 2 times that height. Okay, so let's draw the Brain from Pinky and the Brain. There you have it, the brain from Pinky and the Brain. So that brings us to our final character constructed using 2 ovals for his head. To round out another insane grouping, we're going to draw Squidward from Spongebob SquarePants. Like the brain, the first oval we draw for Squidward, his cranium, is wider than it is tall. What most differentiates Squidward's head from the other 2 characters is that there's a space between that cranium oval and then the oval that we use for his cheek and mouth area. Of course, he also has a rather pronounced nose, which is also an oval. The tallest of our 3 characters today, Squidward is a little over 3 heads tall. In other words, however tall we draw his head, his entire body is a little over 3 of those tall. Alright, so let's draw Squidward from SpongeBob. And that's how you do it. There you have it, 3 very different characters constructed starting with 2 simple ovals. Tweety Bird, the brain from Pinky and the Brain, and Squidward from SpongeBob SquarePants. So how do you think you did? Understand, if you've never drawn any of these very different characters before, you can't expect to have drawn them perfectly. You'll notice I don't spend time coloring our simple oval characters during this video because I want my lessons to focus solely on the drawing process. More specifically, the idea of constructing characters using simple shapes and then building them using the level up cartooning process. And now you have the secret formula, the process for drawing 3 more characters. And with that, you can draw them again and again. And by all means, color them when you're done. I promise each time you draw Tweety, the Brain, and Squidward, it'll be a little better and a little easier. I also promise the more you work with me, the better you're going to get at all of your cartoon characters. So I'd love to see your drawings of our 3rd group of characters built using simple shapes. If you can, take a picture and post it on either Facebook or Instagram, and don't forget to include the hashtag #LevelUpCartooning. I hope you had as much fun as I did with this one. Remember to subscribe, and thanks for joining me. Until next time, keep drawing, my friends.